I'm Dr. Linda Bradley. I'm actually founder of Celebrate Sisterhood. This enters our 12th year, my 12th year of being involved with multicultural women's health programs. And we have served in the last decade plus more than 7,000 women with community programs much like this. We have an annual program in the fall, our big gala event this year. We had Montel Williams and Dr. Hyman and had almost 800 people. I do want you to mark your calendar for October 17th of this year, also for our gala event with a very special guest, but I can't tell you yet who that's going to be. So, but for this evening, what we've tried to do for Celebrate Sisterhood is to have different kinds of programs and show different leadership among the physicians within our practice. And we put the program on in October. Dr. Knight has become well, he's always been a great friend. He has a great holiday party that he invites us old doctors to, so I'm happy to be on the guest list for that. But we were just chatting, and when we look at women's health, it really is things from head to toe. Celebrate Sisterhood has celebrated financial health, talking and having some of the great speaking leaders in our community helping us to gain wealth and keep wealth within our communities. We have had spiritual health. We have talked about sexual health, menopause, alternatives to hysterectomy, contraception, you name it. There's no subject that's too little or not important enough for us to talk about. So Dr. Knight, who you'll meet in a few minutes and I'll introduce, kind of came up to me and said, you know, Dr. Bradley, I think I've got a great spokesperson for you, or for, not for me, for our community, and a patient of his that he will describe and introduce. And we came up with a catchy term for this evening's program, Tea, Testimony, and Truth. And Dr. Knight will tell you about the issue of tea and how joy fits into this. Testimony will be sometimes as doctors hearing from the patient's voice. What is her story? I did a talk once that was entitled The Woman at the End of the Speculum. And so our patients help guide us in our research interest and what we push for advocacy for our community, what we want to happen in the healthcare arena. And truth is going to be what Dr. Knight will talk with you about. How can we, when possible, know about GYN health, the different cancers? What might you be able to do? And more importantly, what kinds of what I call old wives' tales, things that your mother and grandmother might have told you that really might not hold anymore? When do you need to see a doctor? When do you need to worry? So he is a GYN oncologist. He is at the Cleveland Clinic and actually did his GYN fellowship. So basically, he did additional training after his residency. Before starting his career in medicine, he was actually a public school teacher. And he taught high schoolers biology, chemistry, and mathematics. And you probably know that the Latin derivative of the word doctor means teacher. So you have a physician who has taught young minds, and you probably have inspired many into nursing, healthcare areas. So teaching has often, and for a long time, been a part of his repertoire. He also went to Yale undergraduate, and he volunteered as a college prep tutor to mentor high school students in underserved communities who were applying in the medical specialties. He believes that knowledge is power and that success is gained by becoming informed consumers, informed students, informed people in the community. He then went on to Harvard Medical School in Boston and completed his obstetrics and gynecology program and training at the Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital, and then interviewed at the Cleveland Clinic. And I had the pleasure of interviewing and grilling him to make sure he had the right stuff to be at the Cleveland Clinic. So in 2013, he was appointed staff physician, and I think we're just seeing the beginning of a phenomenal, young, talented physician that will help elevate all of our lives. He has patients, as you'll see, from all over the world, all colors, all ethnic backgrounds, all incomes. And he's just a delight to be around. And so for this evening, I'm going to sit back and just enjoy the evening. I can put my feet up, I know that you guys will have a great evening. He'll tell you about the evening, what's going to be available to purchase at the end of the evening, and we're going to also have a few raffle prizes, and you have to be here in order to get them. And we promise to get you out of here for the game, but I can't tell you enough for this evening how much it means to see all of you here. We'll have a mic at the end for questions and answers, and it is a delight to welcome Dr. Jason Knight, who is this evening's Master of Ceremonies. Thank you. I get to hug him. Thank you so much. All righty, thank you. All right.
Well, Dr. Bradley, thank you so much for that introduction. And thank you so much for braving the cold and coming here after work without a full dinner. I really do appreciate you guys celebrating with us. Tonight wouldn't be possible without the support of our friends and partners. And I'd like to thank some of the people who really came through to make this event possible. This event is made possible by a generous donation by Katie and Tom Wigglesworth, the Hellmonics Corporation, the Hellomics Corporation, the Fourth Angels, Sanofi Pharmaceuticals, Metro Home Furniture, a locally owned furniture retailer in Mentor, Ohio, the Cleveland Clinic Women's Health Institute, and countless volunteers, many of whom you met tonight, who donated their time to make this event possible. And of course, to my co-presenters, Joy and Shirlene, whom you'll meet in a little while. So thank you all for making this event possible. True to the title, today we're going to talk about how cancer affects our lives. And it's important to remember that when cancer enters a person's life, it enters an entire family. It enters an entire community. And as such, it makes sense that when we talk about cancer, we really should talk as a family. We should talk as a community, because all of us are affected in some way when cancer enters into our lives. If you look around you, in this audience, some of you are fighting cancer right now. In this audience, some of you are supporting someone in their fight against cancer. In this audience are people who haven't been directly affected by cancer, but have been thinking about it, have been wondering about it. So we all have an interest in sharing ideas, sharing our hopes, our fears, our experiences, to elevate each other so that we can overcome a disease that takes so much from us, to help us find hope at a time when there seems to be only darkness. So, in a moment, you'll meet two very inspirational people. Joy, who's a patient of mine that I met at a very dark time in her life, and Shirlene, her longtime friend, business partner, and then caretaker. She kind of fell into that role by accident. We're going to share our collective story of how cancer affected each of us. Me as her doctor who had to care for her, Joy as the person going through it, and Shirlene as someone who got caught up in the mix and truly rose to the occasion to help a friend in need. Tonight's presentation is going to be divided into two parts. The first part is going to be a discussion about what cancer is, what its risk factors are, what we can do to prevent it. We'll have a moment to do questions and answers. And then the second part is going to be a fireside chat where the three of us will share candidly our experience as our lives intersected. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions twice. Due to the interest of time, we will run straight through. And afterwards, we will break bread together, sharing tea from the mountains of Kenya, from one of Joy's farmers who's provided tea for us. If you like the tea, there's also tea for you to purchase and bring home. So please make sure to visit her at the end. I think I'll start with a little bit of truth. The truth about cancer is that 1 in 3 women in the United States will be diagnosed with cancer sometime in their lives. The truth is that almost 1 out of every 2 men will be diagnosed with cancer sometime during their lives. The truth is, in the United States, 580,000 people lose their battle with cancer and perish. To put that in perspective, the population of Cleveland is about 350,000. So just think about it. Every year, more than the population of Cleveland leaves us due to cancer. Those are really difficult statistics to talk about. They're painful, especially for people who are fighting cancer, especially for people who are supporting someone fight with cancer. How do we as a group overcome that? How do we conquer what cancer does to our minds? My feeling is the first thing to do is just meet it dead on, face to face. Expose cancer for what it is. And by exposing it, we disarm it, and by disarming it, we can overcome it. We may lose some of the personal battles from time to time. We might not win every fight, but our minds do not have to be defeated. I think the perfect place to start when it comes to exposing cancer is to just talk about what cancer is. And the easiest way in my mind to think about cancer is to go to an imaginary place and to think in the form of a parable. What is cancer? Well, think about your body. Your body is a palace. Your body is your Taj Mahal. It is the vessel that contains you. And like any palace, a palace has residents, people who live there, subjects, your kingdom, your queendom. How many subjects do you have in your palace? Well, in your body, there are 37 trillion cells. In other words, 37 trillion tenants or subjects, however you want to think of your palace. What is 37 trillion? Well, 37 trillion is 5,000 times larger than the number of people on this planet. That's how many subjects are in your body. 37 trillion. 5,000 times the number of people on the planet. What a palace you have. So your palace has these tenants. And if you've ever been a landlord, you know that if you have tenants, you have to give them a key to the palace. So that means there are 37 trillion keys to your palace. To every vault, to every sacred place in your body, there are 37 trillion keys. You can see where this is going. How do you keep your palace safe if there are 37 trillion keys held by 37 trillion tenants? At some point, there's bound to be a tenant who disagrees with you, who wants to steal from you, who wants to take from you that which is sacred. Well, somebody greater than me figured out a problem to that, a solution, a police force, as it were, called your immune system. Now, when you think about your immune system, you're thinking about, oh, my immune system fights infections. This is true. Think about infections in terms of this palace analogy. Infections are outside intruders trying to get in. And your immune system protects the perimeter of your body, sees an intruder, and casts it down. But there's also something called an inside job. You know what an inside job is. You've worked at a place for a long time. You know the ins and outs. You know how to get from point A to point B without being detected. And you pull a fast one on the boss when nobody's looking. That's called an inside job. But you know, the police are onto that too. So your immune system is constantly surveying the subjects of your kingdom, looking for someone who's trying to pull an inside job. That's the only reason why we make it to adulthood. If there was no way to keep those 37 trillion subjects in check, we'd all be gone 3 days after we were born. So thank God for the immune system. It's keeping your tenants in line until it doesn't. Until it doesn't. That, my friends, is cancer. Cancer is when one rogue tenant slips through the net, uses the keys to open the vault, steals the body's nutrients for itself, grows uncontrollably at the expense of the other tenants who are following the rules. And that rogue cell is so fastidious at taking and taking and taking that if left unchecked, it squeezes out every other tenant in the palace. And then it's over. Sounds pretty grim. But let's just go back to the landlord-tenant analogy. You realize you've got a bad tenant. It's messing up the place, causing some disturbance to the other tenants. It's not a good thing. What do? Kick him out. It's time to go. Sheriff comes, eviction. And that sounds easy, but if you've ever been a landlord, you know it's not as easy as it seems. When a tenant knows you're about to evict them, they dig their heels into your palace. And when it comes to cancer, it digs its heels into your body. And as you try to rip it out, it wrecks the place on the way out. Yeah, you got the tenant out, but you go into that apartment and it is torn to shreds. What is that in real life? Well, that's surgery. Right? How do you evict cancer? You do surgery. Why is surgery not a pleasant thing? It's violence. It's sending in the sheriff to kick out a tenant who doesn't want to leave. Surgery is rough. It's not easy. And it's kind of sad, in my opinion, that we haven't come up with a better way. Right? You'd think decades and decades of medical science, we would have come up with a more elegant way to get the cancer out instead of physically ripping it out. But it is what it is. But is it the only way? No, it's not the only way. So in your palace, maybe not in your palace, but I'll be honest, some people's palaces have vermin, mice, roaches, things you don't want in there. Well, what do you do if your tenant complains, well, I've got vermin? Smoke it out. Get a roach bomb. Fumigate. That's chemotherapy. Right? Now, as you know, when you fumigate your property, there's going to be some collateral damage. You want to get out of that place. You don't want to be breathing in those fumes. And that's kind of what chemo is like. Chemo is fumigating the palace. You're trying to get rid of the cancer, but the very same medication that you're using to get rid of the cancer can also affect normal tissue, can also affect normal tenants. And that's the double-edged sword that is chemo. So at the end of the day, it's not easy. There's no perfect solution. And that's why this disease demands so much from people. And we'll talk about that more. So that's what cancer is. But how does cancer happen? How do we get there? Well, a couple of ways. We already talked about one, the immune system. If the immune system is asleep at the switch, misses the inside job, that's one way that cancer can happen. But another way that cancer can happen is by things we expose our bodies to. Okay? Well, how could that do something? Well, inside of every cell, inside of every tenant, is a code of conduct, house rules. It's called DNA. Every cell follows the house rules. And trust me, your cells, your tenants, when you came into this earth, typically had good house rules. But at some point, some of those rules got a little mixed up. Somebody spilled coffee on them. Or in this case, too much alcohol got spilled on them. Or cigarette smoke got spilled on them. If you think about it, your DNA, your cell's house rules are not set in stone. They can be damaged by the things we're exposed to, like alcohol, like cigarette smoke, like too much red meat, like toxins in the air, toxins in the water, toxins in the environment, toxins at your workplace. All of these things can corrupt the house rules so that the house rule that says you shall not make noise gets changed. You shall make noise. One little word changes the entire meaning. And so the second way that cancer can happen is when the house rules get corrupted by things that your tenants are exposed to during their lifetime in your palace. Well, all things come in threes, right? There's a third way that cancer can happen. Now, I told you a little white lie. The white lie was that when you come into this earth, all of your house rules were perfect. It's not entirely true. I'm sure people know people, or maybe themselves, are in a family where it seems like everybody in my family is getting the same cancer over and over and over. Everyone has breast cancer in my family. Everyone has colon cancer in my family. And they lived a good life. They never smoked, they never drank, they never did anything. But we're all getting this. And in those situations, it's possible to inherit, when you're born, from your parents, a mutation or a slight revision in the house rules that makes it more likely that those cells will turn into cancer. So the third way that you can get cancer is through corrupted rules that you inherit from your family. And it is a fact of life. The good news is we have ways to detect that. And if we can detect it early, we can offer interventions. So I'm glad we figured that part out. So those are the three ways that cancer happens: exposures, lapses in the immune system, or inheriting a predisposition for cancer through your genetics. So is there any hope? There's always hope. What can we do to reduce our likelihood of developing cancer? If we have cancer, what can we do to support our system? Well, it makes sense that if the immune system is responsible for patrolling the palace, one of the things all of us can do is support our immune system. Makes a lot of sense. What can you do to support your immune system? A couple of really big things. One, exercise. Exercise stimulates the immune system. Do we know exactly how or why? Not quite. Do we know that it works? Absolutely. So while it's hard to do, particularly in the winter, and I am victim of that too. It is cold outside. I don't want to exercise. Ask anybody. I don't really do it as much as I should. But at least I know the path I should walk, although I might not always walk it. I know the path. Exercise supports the immune system. The food you eat affects the immune system. So diets that are rich in antioxidants will support your immune system. So antioxidants basically help to scavenge chemicals in your body that can corrupt the house rules. That's what antioxidants do. They collect the toxins that are trying to damage the house rules. What foods are high in antioxidants? Well, we wouldn't be talking tea, testimony, and truth if tea wasn't one of them. So tea is rich in antioxidants, some more than others. Blueberries strawberries, fruits, fresh fruits, vegetables, the berries in particular, rich in antioxidants. Throw some blueberries on your cereal in the morning. Lots of antioxidants. Have some blueberries as a snack. Lovely. Drink a cup of tea instead of coffee before you go to work in the morning. And when you come home at night, antioxidants. They're all around. Now, the antidote to antioxidants, the opposite, unfortunately, are alcohol, red meat. Cheese is not the enemy, but in large quantities it can be. So the key is to not go crazy in one direction or the other. The key is to know what's going to help your body, focus on that, and then do the rest, with a few exceptions, in moderation. Right? So smoking is always bad. So there's no such thing as smoking in moderation. Unfortunately, it's just not true. Drinking in moderation is possible, thank goodness. We got to have some fun. For women, how much drinking is considered healthy, or at least not excessive? Does anybody know? That's right. Not more than 1 serving a day, okay? And so a serving, you were very specific. You know, how much do you drink? 1 drink. And then my next question is, well, what is it and how big is a cup? So don't lie to yourself. You can if you want. You know, so I have somebody say, yeah, I drink 1 drink, and they come with their 20-ounce Slurpee, and it's all vodka. That doesn't count, okay? So yeah, 1 serving of alcohol. And so depending on what it is, that will determine the volume, but 1 serving. And just be honest with yourself. Not more than 1 serving a day. So this is something that I kind of had to be reminded of the other day. Can you save up your servings for later? I didn't drink all week, so I'm going to have my 7 servings on Friday. Does that work? No. You can't save for the later. You can't, there is no drink bank. So 1 a day is all you get. All right? So we talked about exercise. We talked about antioxidants. We talked about limiting antioxidants, the antidotes to them, like lots of red meat, too much alcohol. And so those are the keys to a healthy lifestyle. In the next few minutes that we have, because I don't want to run over and I want to save time for questions, I want to talk specifically to cancer prevention, okay? What can we do to prevent cancer? Now, here's the thing. Those of you who are fighting cancer, you might be just automatically turning your brain off. You're saying, you know what, I don't have to listen to this part because I already have cancer, and so, you know, this is not even worth it to me. That's not true. So, lightning can strike twice. And as medical technology gets better and better, as we're able to, in a way, rescue people from the cancer that they came in with, the longer those people live, thank God, unfortunately, the more exposure they have to the other cancers that everybody's at risk for. So cancer prevention is important for everyone, even people who've had cancer. So let's talk a little bit about cancer prevention, all right? The number 1 cancer in women is breast cancer, okay? And each year in the United States, 232,000 women are diagnosed with breast cancer. Each year, 232,000 people. Almost the entire population of Cleveland, which just explodes my mind to think that that many people every year. The good news is that we actually have methods to detect cancer of the breast at its earliest stage, and if you detect it early, it is often curable. And mammography and breast examination are the cornerstones of detection. So after the age of 40, women should get yearly breast exams by a physician, as well as mammograms. Certain people in higher risk categories have separate guidelines, and we'll get to that in a moment. So one is prevention through screening. The other is supporting your body. The immune system fights breast cancer. Do those things. Excessive alcohol has been directly related to breast cancer. So that's another reason. It's going to get very repetitive in a moment. Smoking increases the risk of breast cancer. And so support your immune system, keep your antioxidants up, and avoid those exposures that are trying to corrupt the rules, and make sure that you get screening. The other piece is, remember how I said the third way that you can get cancer is if you're born with abnormal house rules? How many of the people, if you feel comfortable sharing this, how many of the people in this audience have spoken to their family members about cancer and who has or has not had cancer in their family? Outstanding. But we can do better. That number should be 100%. If you don't know your family's history, medical history, cancer history, you won't be able to know whether you might be in danger. So it's very important. If there's one thing that you do, to the best of your ability, talk with your families. Learn your family's medical history. Once you've learned that history, share it with your doctor. Because if your doctor identifies a dangerous pattern, say in cancer, you may be eligible for additional screening and treatment that can reduce that risk so that you don't suffer the same way that family members before you had to. And isn't that what we all want for our kids? We want for our children to have a better experience than we had ourselves. Well, part of that is making sure we communicate with them, that we share our history with the ones we love, so that the ones we love can use that history to improve themselves. Please share with your families to the extent that you can. It's not always easy. Trust me, my family's not the easiest family to talk to, and it's not always easy. Colon cancer is the #2 cancer in women. In the United States, 65,000 women each year will be diagnosed with a colon cancer. The usual suspects are implicated: poor immune systems, exposure to toxins. For colon cancer, the toxins are red meat, low fiber diets, high saturated fat diets, comfort foods. Now, does that mean that you're not allowed to have comfort foods? No. Life wouldn't be worth living if it wasn't for those foods. But we have to balance it out in moderation. We need to make sure that we're doing the healthy things so that every once in a while we can have that treat. Knowing your family history. Does colon cancer run in families? Yes, it does. Know your family history, because if you have a family history of colon cancer, just like breast cancer, there may be additional interventions and screening available to you. The third most common cancer in women is endometrial cancer. 53,000 women each year will be diagnosed with endometrial cancer, also known as uterine cancer. Again, usual suspects: immune system, exercise, all of those things apply here. The one thing to know is that uterine cancer is special in a way in that there is a symptom that happens with uterine cancer that almost always happens in the earliest stage, and that is bleeding after menopause. Everyone in the audience must know. And I actually called my mom up when she was going through the change. And at that time, I had an advantage. I was an obstetrician gynecologist. And so for me, it was no big deal calling my mom and say, "Mom, are you going through menopause? Mom, did you know that after menopause, if you have any bleeding whatsoever, that could be a sign of cancer and you need to tell your doctor?" It was a little bit easier for me to say because, oh, it's Jay, the gynecologist, calling, Jay, my son, the gynecologist, and he can talk to me about these things. It might not always be easy to talk to family members about that, but we have to do it. Because it's a tragedy if someone has bleeding, they ignore it, they don't think it's a problem after menopause, only to find out that they had a treatable cancer which is no longer treatable because it has advanced too far. Also, if someone is not menopausal in the reproductive years, if the bleeding pattern changes, if there's bleeding in between periods, that can also be a sign of a problem. Is it necessarily cancer? No, but it's a sign that maybe someone should speak to a doctor and have an examination, have an evaluation. These are important things. Last cancer I'll talk about, because we could get bored to death talking about these different cancers. We have to mention ovarian cancer. The interesting thing about ovarian cancer relative to the other ones is that 22,000 women each year are diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Ovarian cancer, on the list of cancers that women have, ranks very far